All right. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Wine Women and Words. I am Michelle, and with me, of course, is Diana.
Hello.
And this evening, we are going to be hanging out with Andrea Catalano, and we'll be discussing The First Witch of Boston. Thank you so much for making some time for us, and I just have a feeling it's going to be such a fun chat with you tonight. So, welcome.
Thank you so much. I've been really looking forward to this ever since I met Diana back in June, and she told me all about it. Like, let's do this.
Yes. I
Yeah.
feel like when we met, we also like had this like great connection where we were like instant friends right from the beginning. And I'm like, okay, you were like one of the first people I like signed up when we decided to bring the podcast back. I'm like, all right, I'm getting you on here.
Thank you very much. Very flattering. Thank you.
So for those who are not familiar with the book, could you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes. So The First Witch of Boston is a historical fiction novel, and it is the fictional narrative of Margaret Jones, who was the first woman tried and executed for witchcraft in Massachusetts Bay Colony. She was tried and executed in 1648, so 40 some odd years before all the Salem nonsense. Um, and the story is in two parts, and it's told from the perspective of her husband, who her husband's name was Thomas Jones. He was also brought up on charges of witchcraft himself, but the charges didn't stick. So he got off. And so the half the book is told from his perspective, and then the other half is told from Margaret Jones's perspective.
So this is definitely going to be one of those research rabbit hole discussions, because that's probably one of my favorite parts of historical fiction novels and talking to historical fiction writers, because I cannot imagine what goes into writing a historical fiction book. I live in the fantasy genre,
Okay.
so I just I think it's so incredible how historical fiction writers can bring history and historical figures to life in their story. So what to start with, what was the first kind of detail or fact or part of this story that kind of caught your eye and made you want to explore it through this novel?
Yeah. So I originally came across the story of Margaret Jones many, many years ago, back in ancient times when I was a postgrad student. I was doing my master's degree in 17th century British and North American history, specifically indentured servant migration from East Anglia to Massachusetts, 1635 to 1700. And it was while going through like doing genealogical work to trace indentured servants and to see like their trajectory once they got to the Massachusetts Bay Colony. That's when I
Mhm.
came across the story of Margaret Jones, just like in the record. Um, and then that led me to taking a look at John Winthrop's diary, where he writes extensively about the trial. He was governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony at that time, and also one of the nine members of the General Assembly. Those were the judges who tried Margaret Jones.
Wow.
So he wrote about each charge that she was brought up on, and he had a lot to say about this woman, which is, I mean, John Winthrop had a lot to say about a lot of stuff. He was kind of, he didn't lack in confidence, to be nice about it. So, but the way he describes this trial, and especially the way he describes Margaret Jones, like in her intemperate state, that she was hysterical and she was railing, and I'm like, oh, who's this lady? She sounds amazing. So I came across the story as a grad student. I thought to myself, wow, you know what? That would like seriously make a great novel someday. So, skip ahead many, many years. And I circled back around to this story again in 2016. I was looking to write another novel. I'd already written three, and I was looking for a new novel idea. And I remembered this story of Margaret Jones. And it was about a couple of months after my godmother, my aunt, had passed away. And I was very, very close with her, and it was unexpected, and it was very tragic. But after she passed, I felt very inspired to write about a very strong woman who kind of bucked the system and did things her way, and didn't really care about what other people thought, which was very much how my godmother was. She was a very like no nonsense, just walked her own beat kind of person, and I always admired her. So her passing kind of sparked my desire to write about Margaret Jones. And that's just how it kind of started up again. So I started writing the book in 2016. And then later in 2016, I became pregnant with my daughter. And when I'm pregnant, my creative brain just turns to absolute mush. So I was like, I just couldn't write to save my life because, I'm busy creating something else. So like all the creative energy is going there. So I put aside the book for a bit and then came back to it for a bit. And then COVID happened. So I was homeschooling two kids, and that kind of put the brakes on any creativity for a bit.
Hmm.
And then once we got past that, I circled back around again and really plunged back into it. So that's kind of that's a very uh, short summary of how it all happened.
But one of the things I love about that story, there's a couple things I love about that story. Um, but the idea that there was something that you were interested in, like that little spark of the story, because that's where, I found story ideas where it's like, wow, wouldn't this be interesting? Or, when I was researching the two Sicilies, I was
Yeah.
like, who was a poor woman who had to be married to that man?
Oh God, yeah, totally. I have your book right up here. It's on my TBR pile. I can't wait to read
I
that one
appreciate
because
that.
did you not to totally switch gears here, but did you ever read The Volcano Lover by Susan Sontag?
No, but I want to. That's been on my TBR list forever.
Because she's a character in that book as well as her husband, and yeah, Susan Sontag does not paint the king in a very flattering light. You would love it.
He was he wasn't really the always in the flattering light. He's not a very flattering person
Right,
in
right.
general.
Yeah, totally.
I actually wanted to talk for a second about the cover because
Oh,
I think
yes.
the cover art is gorgeous on
Okay.
this book. Were you able, I know authors aren't able to be involved in the design process or the discussion around it. Were you able to kind of share some insight and input as far as the cover was concerned?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. Because I had, before I signed my book deal, I had talked to so many other authors who had these terrible stories about how they had absolutely no say in their cover, and they had to just like pick the least worst of the worst or whatever, like when they were given a couple of options. I was like, oh wow, so I better not get too like invested in some sort of image or ideal in my mind. Lake Union, my publisher, they have their authors fill out like this questionnaire with various questions, and one of the things they ask is like, what do you envision for your book cover? And they take it into consideration. So I had in my mind this idea of taking like a portrait of a Puritan woman, whether it be an actual portrait from that time or something
Mhm.
made to look like that, and like basically like brutalizing it, like graffiti art over it, in a very sort of like late 70s kind of punk way, like, or Basquiat kind of way, like thinking like never mind the Bollocks, here's the Sex Pistols album cover. Because and I think I had that image in my mind because it's like both society trying to like X out the existence of a woman so that she's just a footnote in history or made out to be this, horrible person by one man. And that's all we've got to run on in the historical record. But also, it's her, like her spirit. Like she was basically like, screw y'all. Like
Mhm.
I'm not gonna cave to what you want me to be. So in a sense, is very punk, right? So
Yeah.
that was why I had this image in my mind. So I kind of, conveyed this idea in this questionnaire and hoped for the best. And then they came back around with a couple of plays on that image, and I'm like, oh my God, they got it like on the first go. So that was pretty amazing. And
I
I know,
love that.
yeah, it's probably not gonna always be that way, like moving forward. But that was pretty awesome. So I was quite fortunate.
I love this. It's there's something about the simplicity of it that really drew my eye to it. And I say simplicity as in we see so many books out there now where you have all like the bright flashy colors and you have so many like loud things to like try to woo people in, and like the bright reds and what have you. So I love how it's just this portrait of a woman, and it's not her with her head lopped off. It's not her with her face facing away from the camera, which
Yes.
I mean, my debut had that as well. So I don't want to knock that because it was
No, because like
style
90,
of the time.
I was gonna say 90% of the historical fiction market has that. So we can't knock
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
I was on the book was featured on somebody's reel where they were going around on at Barnes and Noble, and they're like, "Oh, woman facing this way looking at this, woman facing this way looking at a ship." And I had so many people send me that video, and it was just that it was that marketing thing where they just didn't believe that women were they believed that we were too judgmental.
Yeah.
And they wanted us to be able to picture the woman's face on our own.
Right. Yes, I've heard this. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm
And so
not
I
buying
love
it, but okay.
yeah, same. But I love the fact that it's her side profile, which it's a lovely profile.
Yeah,
Like
she's
I
great.
don't like, huh?
She's quite
Is that,
pretty.
yeah, she
Well,
is.
you can almost see her face. Like you can almost see it.
Yeah, like you can get it's the sense with the lips and the nose. But like when you were talking about having that X out, that graffiti like of that and the way it's brilliant. And that's why I said it's a beautifully it's simplistic beauty
Yeah.
is what it is. Where it's not going to just like be up in your face like you've got to read me, take me now. It's yeah, you want this book. Yeah. You
I'm
want
going.
this book. Pick up this book, bring me home.
Of course, everybody wants this book, right? I'm using the
Hmm.
force while I say that. You are going to buy this. So these are not the droids you're looking for. Sorry.
Oh, we're a bunch of nerds.
Nerds. Yep.
We totally are.
All good.
Yes. So one of the things and hopefully when I had to leave the room, I'm not repeating this question. Let me know if I am. But we've had such a fascination with the witch trials as a society and history. Like it'll come up with in pop culture. I'm thinking of like shows like Charmed, uh, the what was it? The Discovery of Witches,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
you have it. That's a major part of it.
Mhm.
And to this day, well, I remember going to when I went to visit Salem, they had the tours. It's such a huge tourist thing there.
Yes.
I kid you not, I was with my husband and we're walking around this like little cemetery thing there. And there was this chipper little college girl talking about Wicca to these other girls that were not much younger than her, giving her a witch tour. And I was like, oh, dear Lord.
It's kind of like Disneyland for witches in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very touristy. Um,
Hmm.
Salem is like such a cool town. Like even like witch stuff aside, it's a very
Hmm.
town. It's a very um it's diverse, super diverse, both
Hmm.
like economically and you know, racially and ethnically diverse. I actually taught eighth grade history there for a year.
Oh,
Um,
Really?
wow.
yeah, I did. And I taught in the middle school, and there was all these rumors that that the middle school was haunted, but I myself never experienced anything haunted there. That was just the rumor.
I don't
There's
know.
rumors like that all over the place. There in Disneyland, it's filled with rumors about hauntings.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's some. It's like okay, they're like plausible explanations, and then there's a few where it's like, ooh, okay, maybe.
Yeah, I didn't need to know that story.
I just know
I
whenever I walk past Haunted Mansion, and and when it was nobody was there, it was at night, and you have to walk through there to be able to get out, and all
Yeah.
you could hear was the come back, don't forget your, like just hearing that alone, pick up my steps, go a little bit faster walking past Haunted Mansion.
Yeah, that scared the crap out of me when I was like 9. Now I love it, but that was
Yeah,
seriously legit
Salem
scary
is a
at 9.
very going back to where we were.
Yeah,
Salem is
sorry.
a very no worries, no worries. I'm the one who got us onto Disneyland. Um, it's a very interesting town. I I think I was there. We were there in the fall, so it was before the Halloween rush when we were there. So it felt very touristy, and so for me, that gave me the ick because of the touristiness of it.
Yeah, I
But
get I get what you mean. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I'm like, this is kind of like a reverence because so many women died here, and you want to be all touristy about something about these all these women dying. It was just kind of like I was
Yeah.
having this kind of like
And all the
existential
t-shirts.
issue.
Yeah, all the t-shirts and the merch and stuff, which is cool. I
Hmm.
mean, like, you know, I'm not
But
knocking
like
that.
seeing the houses and stuff, it was like very cool.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I got married in Salem.
Hmm.
Yes, my wedding.
Really?
Yeah, my ceremony and reception were in Salem. I got married at the First Church of Salem, which was it's the oldest congregation in North America, and it's where
Wow.
Roger Williams was the pastor, and he got thrown out of Massachusetts Bay Colony
Oh
by John
wow.
Winthrop. You know, John Winthrop was a really pleasant guy. So yeah, that's the church I got married at. So because again, like massive history nerd. So. And my husband was like, sure, that's cool, whatever. Like, it's all good.
I have
He
friends in
knew.
California who married there out there in Salem as well. They went and they eloped up there.
Oh, nice. That's fun.
Yeah. Yes, lots of fun. So the original question I was trying to go for was that why do you think I know because we are the queen of side quests in this
Yeah.
podcast, and I feel like we've done so many side quests just getting to this question. Um, but why do you think that the Salem witch trials has been so like so ingrained within our cultural like collective? More so than you can see. You see, there's a lot of other massacres and things that happen in our history that we talk about,
Right.
but I feel like this one has, and I know that at the risk of sounding gross about it, but it has a popularity over the
Yeah.
others.
I think there's a definite morbid curiosity factor.
Hmm.
You know, if you're somebody who reads about, you know, you read about what happened, what transpired in Salem, like there's some elements of the story that are really kind of wild and scary and like, you know, fodder for a horror film. Like girls, you know, falling into fits and becoming ill and not being able to speak and, you know, stuff that did seem supernatural. I mean, especially at the time, right? When there was
Hmm.
no scientific explanation for things. And even now,
Hmm.
historians try to, you know, pinpoint what would have caused that? What would have caused these young women to, you know, act the way they did and react
Hmm.
the way they did to, you know, the things going on in the trial? You know, and I, you know, not to go down a rabbit hole with Salem, but there's been, you know, many different analyses by historians. You know, I'm sure you guys have heard all of them. Like, you know, there's always been that one that like there's the when is it rye seed or barley or something that they make beer with, like that it can grow this fungus that can have an hallucinogenic effect, that perhaps that mold was in the crop or something. So there's I don't remember all the specifics of that. That's not really my area, but there's that. And then there's another historian whose book about Salem I really enjoyed. It came out about 20 something years ago. Mary Beth Norton is the historian. I think she's at Cornell, I think, or she was. Anyway, one of her theories is that a lot of these young women in Salem who who were, part of the trial, they were actually orphans that had come from north of Salem. They had come from Kittery, what's now Kittery, Maine, but Maine was Massachusetts then.
Hmm.
And that was where there were a lot of pretty brutal run-ins with the native tribes. The Native Americans who lived in that Kittery area, um, they they had what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like there was an incident where they went into the town and kind of massacred a lot of people in retaliation for all the massacres that had happened to them, of course. But anyway, a lot of these young women had their whole families massacred and they survived. And a lot of them were witnesses to this massacre. So there's this there's this theory that maybe this was like a PTSD kind of response from some of these young women who then were shipped to Salem to become servants because they didn't have any families anymore. And some of these women, I don't know the details. Again, this isn't my area of study. Um, but I've heard that theory as well, which is
Hmm.
that's pretty wild too. Anyway, but going back to the original question, why are people so fascinated by Salem? I think because first of all, it is kind of like scary and wild because we don't have an explanation for why these things happen the way they did. Also, these whole trials of, 19 innocent people being executed without even like a shred of tangible evidence, right?
Yeah.
Like execution with, a guilty verdict with no physical tangible evidence, just hearsay. That's frightening. That's very frightening that, humans can do that to other humans. Um, I mean, unfortunately, it, goes on. This is the timeless theme, unfortunately, in many parts of the world. But I think that that is very arresting to the imagination, like that this happened in this country. And these were also people, when we think back to, the settlers, the original founders, like we think of them as being these very God-fearing, godly people. And they use that as an excuse for doing what they did, right?
Hmm.
Religion being used as a weapon. So in my mind, I just think that people are fascinated by the fact that, here we're 19, we know innocent people hanged or pressed to death, Giles
Yeah.
Corey, because for one reason or another they were accused by their neighbors, fellow parishioners, whatever, for whatever ulterior motives that there were. And that's a very scary and very real thing that
Hmm.
people are fascinated by. That's my theory.
I think that's a very good theory, and I think you nailed it quite a bit. And it's like I agree with every single one of your points.
Thanks. Yeah.
And you're kind of to that point that about that fascination um about the Salem witch trials. Sorry, my dog decided to wake up right now and shake. Um, your book takes place 40 years before
Mhm.
the Salem witch trials, and I don't think a lot of people, well, maybe more so today, but when you first start learning, when you first hear witch trials, you think Salem. And I
Sure.
don't
Yeah.
think a lot of people realize that Salem was not the first, or was it the not the worst, but the most widespread. Uh, I can't think of the word that I'm trying to think of. Do you know what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I do know what you're saying. I think that Salem is an example of one of the um largest, witchcraft executions at one go. Like, I don't know, like in one instance or something like that.
Mhm.
Um, obviously these trials have been going on throughout Europe and in England and Scotland, especially in the 100 or so years, leading up to Salem. Um, the legal code or rules used for trying Margaret Jones were taken from it was legal code taken from England. It was the same legal code that was being used back there at the same time that was used in the Essex witch trials. It was written by Matthew Hopkins, who wrote A Discovery of Witchcraft. And he basically, for whatever reason, thought himself an expert on this topic and said that if you want to, find out if somebody is in cahoots with Satan or is a witch or a sorcerer or whatever, you have to put them in a room and have them sit on the floor cross-legged for 24 hours, and they can't leave the room, and they have to be watched for 24 hours. They can't move, they can't lie down, they can't go to sleep. And that in that 24 hours, if they are, conspiring with Satan or whatever, that there'll be some evidence that will come forth in that 24 hours, like a familiar or an imp, like Satan in the form of a familiar or an imp, would come and visit the accused because the imp has to nurse off the accused. It's crazy. Like,
So weird.
yeah, right. So then, and that was the other thing.
And,
Also, there was
and
an,
can I ask a question? The
yeah,
person who's watching them, does it have to be the same person or can it be a different person?
I mean, that I don't know the deets on that.
Okay. Because the question, because I mean, if you have to be this, if it has to be the same person watching them, that person could go a little stir crazy themselves and
Sure.
be like, I saw this.
Yeah, yes, and um in for the purposes of the storytelling in my book,
Mhm.
I have the same person watch her overnight, um,
Okay.
the night shift, and that's when some crazy shit happens. And
Swearing is perfectly okay in this podcast. We are PG 13-ish.
oh, okay, okay, very good to know. Um, yeah, so Matthew Hopkins also said, okay, so you had to watch the person for 24 hours to see if like Satan in the form of an imp or familiar comes to visit the person. The other thing, you needed to examine their whole body. They had to be examined to see if there was any mark of Satan upon their body, like a witch's teat, because that's how the imp would nurse off of the witch. So a
Mhm.
witch's teat could be misconstrued to be anything. It could be a birthmark, a mole, a wart, a scar. Like some people are born with third nipples, like that. That was very damning back then. Um, unfortunately. And that's what happened and so with Margaret Jones, not to give too much away, but one of the things that is, brought against her in the trial is that supposedly in her examination they found a witch's teat on the inside of her upper thigh. And that is exactly what John Winthrop says, a witch's teat. It's like, well, what the hell is that? Right. So then that gave me some creative license. It's like,
Mhm.
on earth could a witch's teeth be? The poor woman just probably had like a freckle or a mole or a birthmark, and they
Mm.
used it to support their narrative. So yeah, I don't even know where this question originated. But
I think it was that Salem wasn't the only place where there were witch trials.
yes, yeah, that and that there was a whole precedent, a whole legal precedent that was being used for this purpose in 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 England and in Scotland. That was, I don't know the exact year that Discovery of Witchcraft by Matthew Hopkins was written. I want to say maybe 1640, so only like 8 years before this actual trial. But it was like the gospel. This is what the people were using to bring up these charges and to like try a person for witchcraft. It's crazy.
And what I find very, I don't want to say scary, but maybe a little concerning is our legal system is based off of the English system. We have a lot of our laws that go back to those very first laws
Yeah.
from the colonies because that's where I think a lot of the things are introduced from that. So there's like this one little part of me that's like, this is kind of concerning in some ways, especially considering the fact that this was all what they were doing was considered legal. So this also goes back to that whole just because it's legal doesn't mean it's morally correct.
Right. Absolutely. Obviously, in this case. Yes.
Now, so one of the things that, if correct me if I'm wrong, but this is written in two different points of view, correct? From the
Yes.
husband's perspective and the wife's perspective.
Yes, you got it.
Okay, so in that question, the vein of that question, what was it like for you to switch point of views from the husband's side going into Margaret's side?
Um, I had fun. It was easy. Because the first half is basically watching this poor woman's fate spiral to this critical point.
Hmm.
I thought it would be great to do it from somebody, standing beside her in life who loved her dearly and understood her better than anybody else. Also, knew what her strengths were and knew what her character flaws were. When I thought about what kind of woman Maggie Jones might have been, I mean, there's a part of me that thinks she might have been a little bit, um, you know, perhaps slightly neurodivergent, that
Hmm.
a little bit, socially, you know, not so bound by social rules of the time, that felt compelled to speak her mind and could not stop herself from doing so. Um, so I wanted to show her, the spiral toward the critical point from the view of her husband, so that we could see him feeling the helplessness that he felt, knowing that this was almost inevitable given where they lived and the way people thought. And there was really nothing that they could do to change what was going to
Mm.
happen. And there was nothing
And
he
I
could.
can only imagine that being so terrifying from the husband's perspective, because here's the woman you love, the woman that you've built your life with,
Yes.
and you're forced to sit there and watch her basically her life just spiral and she's gonna die. And and then of course there's the questions of what's gonna end up happening to you. What's gonna end up happening to your family after that fact too, because I'm sure that he was also going to be marked too, and the family is
Yes.
going to be marked. So it wasn't just the witch herself who was marked, and they weren't going to be like, okay, we can go along. He's going to be fine. His kids are going to be fine.
No.
Yeah, no, the whole family was basically they had that mark on them.
That's a big theme in the book. Because that's the other thing. So John Winthrop wrote all about Margaret Jones's trial. And then in his diary, 2 weeks following the execution, he writes this journal entry about how there was a ship uh, in port at Charlestown, and it was the ship Welcome was the name of the ship, and it was headed towards to Barbados. And for whatever reason, this ship, while it was at port still, started listing starboard, like dangerously so. It was like just tilting and listing, and they couldn't figure out why this was happening. The weather was calm, there was no wind. They kept readjusting the ballast within the hold. There was, I don't know how many tons of lumber, and there were horses in the hold, and they kept readjusting it, and this ship would not right itself. And then John Winthrop says, but then it was noticed that the husband of the woman recently executed for witchcraft was on board the ship. And so because this is the husband of a witch, and there was this crazy business happening on the ship, everybody demanded that he be thrown off the ship.
Mhm.
He gets thrown off the ship, and the ship immediately rights itself, according to John Winthrop. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like, that is a crazy story. That's just wild. So yeah,
Yeah.
you talk about the charges sticking to, everybody surrounding her. There you go. Made this poor
Mhm.
guy get off the ship. They were like, "Oh, well, it's your fault the ship's listing because you must be in cahoots with Satan too." Now, the historic record, we don't know anything about Thomas Jones after him getting thrown off that ship. He disappears from history.
Well, assume that when he gets thrown off the ship, they just throw him overboard because it's not like there's a port that he can just they can just set him on.
Oh no,
I'm assuming they just throw him overboard.
it was the ship was still at port. It was still at
Oh,
the
okay.
docks. That's the crazy part. It was at the
Um,
dock still, and this was happening. So they he was arrested, and then they were like, and then they let him go.
well, at least he wasn't thrown overboard, so at least there's
That
that.
would have sucked. That would have
Yeah.
messed.
That's
Yeah,
immediately where my brain went. My brain went
in the
straight
North
to murder.
Atlantic, yeah, forget about it. You're
I've
gone.
been watching one too many episodes of Dateline.
Yeah.
Straight to murder.
But I
So
do love that you opened the novel with that entry, that scene and or that story that kind of really sets the tone of, you know, Thomas trying to deal with the like all he wants is to start a new life and move on and try to heal and grieve where in a place where he won't be judged for grieving
Hmm.
his dead wife
exactly.
and he can't even leave in peace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine how badly that guy wanted to get out of town? I mean,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, because I wouldn't
And
want to stay there either.
Yeah.
and getting on a ship was probably the fastest and easiest way to leave because where in 1648, where else are you going to go? Like,
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
for crying out loud, I was labeled a witch when I was 17, and I sure as hell got out of there. So I can imagine with Thomas wanting to get out of there too.
so you get it.
I totally get it. I totally get it. There's a reason why I'm in California and not New York.
Wow, that's a story I want to hear sometime.
Oh, you will. Oh, you will. I'll tell it to you.
So obviously it was easy then to switch to the part two when Margaret Jones is at her trial because I felt such outrage, for her, with her. It was very easy to jump into her person and react as the court is trying her. Like her reactions are like, probably all of our reactions if somebody was,
Hmm.
bringing these ridiculous charges up against you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's,
so,
yeah.
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say I know we're probably creeping up if we haven't already gone over our time. This
As
this
I
is
said,
a
we're roughly.
yeah, that's our disclaimer. We're roughly 30 minutes,
I mean,
but
if
we
we're having
always
fun, we're having fun. Why put a time limit on it?
but we always like to ask what our authors are reading. So what are you reading right now? Because we need another book to add to our TBR,
Oh,
clearly.
okay. So the book I'm reading actually it's not a new book. It came out, I want to say like a year and a half ago, maybe. It's Philippa Gregory's Dawnlands, which is the third book in her Fairmile series.
Ooh.
Um, oh, that the first book in that series is mind-blowing. It's called Dark Tides, and it's a witch trial at the end of it. And this one takes place around a similar time. I want to say it's the first English Civil War. Um, and it's about this woman who is like poorer than poor, and she's just struggling to raise her children and make ends meet. And a lot of crazy circumstances happen that are all kind of influenced by the English Civil War raging around her. And the book is set in Sussex. Um, that first book is amazing. And the second book is, the sequel to it is pretty awesome as well. The third book, I only just started it, so I can't really speak to it yet. I'm maybe like 15 pages into it. But I, of course, had to read the third book to see how the series wraps up. So,
I have not read her books in so long, and I have to
yeah.
say, like, I devoured every single one of her tutor books,
Yes, we all
Oh,
did.
and it
same.
was such a huge, she was such a huge influence on Antoinette's sister
Yeah.
because I'm such a fan, and I'm am very, I have not gone back to read more, and I'm like, I feel the need to, and I have a very long flight to and from Ireland.
Yeah. Yeah, you do.
So I'm going to have I am this massive collection of books that I'm going to need to read for this flight. So I think I'm going to have to add that. And I'm going to have to start with obviously the first one.
Yeah, Dark Tides. It's like a very dark book, but oh, it really moved me when I read it.
You
That
gotta love dark books during this time frame. During this time of year, dark books are a necessity.
This is perfect. You're gonna love it.
Mm.
You're gonna love
Oh,
it.
good.
Yeah.
If you would like to order your own copy of The First Witch of Boston, be sure to check out our show notes. You'll find the link to our bookshop on bookshop.org. As always, bookshop.org supports all of our amazing writers. It supports the podcast, but most importantly, it supports all the wonderful indie bookstores out there. And Andrea, I know you got the chance to meet Diana at the historical, gosh, what the conference.
Historical Novel Society.
Thank
Yep.
you.
That's the one.
Welcome.
So, but one day I hope I get to meet you as well because I've had so much fun chatting with you tonight. And you're just gonna have to come back on the show now
I mean,
because
we've got to have a 10 episode punch card.
yes.
Oh yeah, I'm in. Count me in.
10 episodes. At the 10th episode, we come to you.
Let's do this.
Yes.
I'll cook for you guys.
Oh, yay.
Yeah.
We'll
Michelle, it
bring the
was lovely
wine.
to talk with you also. I hope that I get to meet you as well. The feeling's mutual. So this has
Mhm.
been super fun, you guys.
Thank
Yes.
you so much. Have a
Thank you
wonderful
so
rest of
much.
your evening.
Thank you, you too.
Bye.